Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel, Booktician, and today we're going to talk about 13 suspenseful thrillers that I think you need to read. I want to say most of these authors are BIPOC authors. Supporting BIPOC authors is very important, and it just so happened to be what I read the most of when it comes to thriller, mysteries, and horror, but not saying that you can't read outside of that. All of these books, all 13 of them, are in no particular order, even though if you've been on my channel for a while, you already know who is some of my faves. That's no secret to no one. So I don't want to keep you here long, so let's go ahead and get to the list. Number 1 is Nana by Brandon Massey. I apologize if you hear me sniffing or allergies. You know, it's that time of the season. Brandon Massey has such a great way when being descriptive, when leading you into a very suspenseful state of mind towards the end of a chapter. Like you're going on a journey, and then towards the end of the chapter, it's like pressure is building, and then the way he described it, it's just so great. It kind of feels like some type of death love song, if that makes sense. It's like, oh, it's kind of coasting you, like, oh, you're gonna be warm, but then you're gonna die. So that's kind of how I describe it, because it is done so well. And the first thriller we're gonna talk about is Nana by him. So Nana follows the story of this woman. She lost her grandmother, and she goes to her grandmother's funeral, and there's a person there claiming that she is her mother and that she would like to reconnect with her. This woman then invites this woman to her house, and then a whole bunch of strange things happen. And a lot of these strange things is causing, riffraff between this young woman and her husband, and just different entities in her household. A lot of times when you would read each chapter in Nana, you'll be reading and then it'll just be something super eerie that happened. And it wasn't like something that happened out of nowhere. It led you to it, and it always tied back to the chapter before, which kept the suspense more lingering to me. So that's why I truly enjoyed Nana by Brandon Massey. The next one is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. If you're new to this channel, listen, you already know how much I love this writer. Love this writer. Stephen Graham Jones writes in a way, is just telling you a story. It is a story about something that happened, but how it happened was in such a suspenseful way. For example, the setting and how things happen in Brandon Massey is very suspenseful. With Stephen Graham Jones, it's the entire story itself. You're constantly questioning the narrator. You're constantly questioning the scene, the place, the people. You're constantly trying to figure out what is going on, and it's like chills that's going through your body. And The Only Good Indians is that. It follows the story of these 4 young men, I believe, and they go and do something that they shouldn't have done. However, in doing what they did, because I'm trying not to spoil it, end up releasing series of revenge that get enacted on them and people that is close to them. So you're reading how this revenge is being enacted on everyone, but in very specific ways that you just can't help but to be creeped out. I remember reading and listening to this book, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and wash dishes, and my back was to the wall, and there was one scene, one of the guys being in a house and him sitting on a couch and having some type of revelation, and I was so creeped out. I turned around and thought, there was something there, or there was something that was trying to catch me. I felt this was very suspenseful in how the story was set up. Just the whole story together just came together so well. The next book is The Good House by Tananarive Due. I also want to preface and say this. Tananarive Due is an author who writes a lot. You are not gonna find any of her books being less than 430 pages. Some of them go well into 500. I think maybe one of them go into 600. They are very long thrillers. They are very descriptive thrillers. So if that is not your thing, Tananarive Due is not the author for you. I truly love Tananarive Due. Although myself, I prefer shorter thrillers. I prefer a thriller that's anywhere between like 250, 350 pages. When I'm reading Tananarive Due, it does take me a long time to read it because it is a slow burn. It is the slowest burn of thrillers, and it's super suspenseful in that slow burn. I was talking to a group of friends recently, and I was trying to describe the biggest part of her books that makes it so descriptive, and it is that the actual location is also a character, and I didn't even think of that. Blew my mind. However, in The Good House, you follow the story of this young woman, and she is in this house called The Good House, and The Good House has a lot of history behind it. It actually was a house that was inhabited by her grandmother, and her grandmother, she did a lot of root magic and also voodoo, and she just had a lot of spiritual practices that her daughter and her granddaughter, who is the young woman that the book is mainly in her perspective. So you are going through this story about this young woman, her ties to her grandma, her ties to her mother, then her relationship with her husband, her relationship with her son, and you are seeing how this entity, here I go again with entity there, because I don't want to spoil the book, and that's literally the only way that I can describe this thing. So there is an entity again that is coming and trying to infiltrate this family. However, it is left with a lot of tragedy. So I do want you to understand there are content warnings. Anything that has to do with children violence, right, is in this book. It is very brief, certain moments of the book, and it's not very descriptive. So I just wanted to let y'all know that. There's also a content warning of sexual violence as well. What made me really put this book on the list is that I truly enjoyed this book. The suspense was top tier. Reminders of place, the reminders of that our land is sacred was top tier. The way the author combined family knowledge, ancestors, root magic, and like different indigenous practices all into one to make this a really eerie and suspenseful book was done really well. It reminded me very much of the Only Good Indians and the different ways that this book was told. However, it was just told in a more lengthier way, and to me, I found value in both of those books, The Only Good Indian and The Good House. The next book I'm going to talk about is Monster. Y'all know I've been screaming about monsters, monster for probably over a year now. So a couple, I don't know when it was a live show for some manga recommendations, and I cannot remember if it was Ashley for Bookish Realm or if it was a subscriber. And again, I already said this in a video before because I want to make sure that I'm giving y'all credit. One of y'all lovely human beings recommended that I read Monster by Naoki Urasawa, and let me tell you this right now on Beyonce's internet. This manga series owes me nothing. As I stand before you, I am currently in volume 7. Like halfway done. I am taking my sweet loving time reading this manga series because it is so good. There's a person on Instagram who put up this whole like thing in the background, and the person was like, this is all of the things that you need to know about, you know, A Court Thrown in Glass, whatever the name of Sarah J Maas books are, you know, so you don't have to read it. And it was just like a whole little description. I so bad want to do that for Monster. So Monster follows the story of this doctor, Dr. Tenma. He first comes on the scene. He is a very well respected doctor. He has a boatload of credentials, and everyone is kind of envious of him on the low because his skill, he quick with the wrist. Okay, quick with the wrist, and I mean cutting and opening people. Of course, he's a surgeon. One day he gets a case, and we don't have to go into all the background, but he gets a case. You know, it's kind of trippy. The board of this hospital is like, look, we want you to take care of this person because this person is messed up, you know what I mean? Like, and this person got a lot of money. Even though they're messed up, we got to go over there. Tenma was like, nah, these kids that just came in are messed up as well. They were here first. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Literally putting his job on the line. Tenma goes and he take care of these twins. He don't know how intricate and how deep he's about to be in the lives of these twins. If I say anything beyond that, I will spoil it. This is what I will say. It's following Tenma trying to clear his name. There are things that are happening to him that is out of his control, that has nothing to do with him per se, as far as I know. And and there are just creepy things happening. Just people are just dying left and right. Every character that comes in, it's just timed very well. And then there is just this air of you are not really knowing who is the masked puppet behind all these killings. Like, you think that you know, but you don't. And to me, that's what makes it suspenseful. And there's also like this story rhyme that gets introduced, I think in about probably like the 4th, 5th, and 6th volume is when you like really hear this story rhyme. What it is, it's just so creepy. And then hearing people hearing this story rhyme or reading it in a book or seeing it different places just adds to the creepy factor of this manga. It's psychological thriller, which really just like tears you apart because you're like, wait a minute, I don't know what's going on. And it is for sure giving you psychological thriller for sure, but the suspensefulness of it cannot be denied. Number 5 is Confessions by Kanae Minato. Shout out to Kayla from Books and Lala for putting this book in my atmosphere, and she also did this book for her Literally Dead book club pick. I was trying to make sure I said the whole word correctly. This follows the story of this woman. This woman has a child that passed away. She's also a teacher. So she goes to this school that she's a teacher of, and she tells a story. And she is telling the story about her child and the life of her child. And the murderer is in the room. So it goes so many different perspectives of a lot of people involved in this murder or knows what happened or whatever the case is. And it is so insidiously done that the whole time you're reading, you're asking yourself, am I lending compassion to people who have done dirty deeds, or am I missing something? And then the next chapter, another piece is introduced. Then you ask yourself, I'm unsure if I should trust my intuition or not, or is my empathy meter off? Because you are very confused on who is the victim. Is there a victim? And if there is a victim, how many victims are they? What are these people's end games? It's just so creepy. And just like with The Only Good Indian and with The Good House, the audiobook were so creepy and eerie. Like, the people who wrote it really did a good job, and it just added to the level of suspense. And I just kept thinking, like, you know what, I don't want to read this after dark. Like, pretty much these books that I'm talking about is books I just felt like the suspense was so top tier, I had to read them in the light time because, you know, I learned my lesson with The Only Good Indians. Like, no, let's not do that, okay? Creep by Jennifer Hillier is a book that we read for the Crime Readers of Color book club, which is a monthly book club that myself and Shay with the Hobbies does. And Creep follows this woman. She is at the top of her game, living her best. She has a sex addiction. And because of this addiction, she ends up doing something that she should not have done with someone she definitely shouldn't have done doing it, if that makes sense. Like, Bree, don't spoil them, because I can spoil a book unknowingly. So I'm trying to pull it back, you know what I mean? So this young woman, she is also married to this guy who is just like, he's the bread and he's the butter. I have some issues with him later on in the book. I understand people getting their feelings hurt. I get that. So I'm not gonna pretend that I don't. Misogyny is just trash. I'm gonna say that. I also want to say that there's a content warning for stalking. Usually I don't like to read stalking books if they are written a certain type of way. Or the way that the stalking was written in this book, to me, the stalking parts in this book was not so dragged out or personalized to me in my experience that I felt that I was attached to the stalking that was happening in the book. The stalking in this book felt very specific to the character, right? It didn't feel like when I was reading it that I could put myself inside of this woman and her experience. And there are a lot of books where I felt like, you know, it is so relatable. This particular experience wasn't relatable to me specifically, so that's why I didn't feel so attached with it, and I was able to get through the stalking moments of this book. The stalking moments of this book was the most suspenseful. the way that this person went about doing what they did and how they did it, the financial things they put into doing what they did, just how they made sure that they can cover all of their bases, what it appeared to be, cover up all their bases to commit this crime, was just, it just really took skill. Like, this person was like, look, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z to make sure, you know, A, B, and C happens, whatever that is. I also don't really like reading books where I feel that the protagonist is making decisions that are just not smart, and the decisions is so bothersome that I can't get through the book. This protagonist was definitely making decisions that I felt like did not serve her at all most times of the book. I do think that what saved me from being annoyed with her is that there were moments where she redeemed herself, and she redeemed herself in a way that I felt went well with the plot of the book. Like, it kept the plot moving along. The next book is out by Natsuo Kirino. I also want to say, in the previous book that I talked about, Creep, there are content warnings of sexual violence, like I said, stalking, and other types of abuse. Now, Out by Natsuo Kirino was a very tough book for me to get through, and I don't even know how I got through it. Typically, I would never pick up a book like this for a multitude of reasons. Any type of violence you can think of is portrayed in some way in this book. You have murder, you have sexual violence, you have, I think there was some moments of like child abuse, there is intimate partner violence, there is stalking in this book, and there is just so many different ways that this book can really put somebody in their body without their permission. And then also there is a string of fat phobia with one of the characters, and you know, that could be bothersome. Switching gears, I recently read Paper Girl, and there's a character in it, Mac, and Mac to me is extremely homophobic throughout the whole series into like the last 3 issues, I would say, and says some pretty homophobic and also rude, very rude stuff. So it was really hard for me to rate that book and look at it objectively because of the things that Max said. There is a character in Out that says things that is fat phobic. I think I tabbed her saying things like that maybe 5 or 6 times. It wasn't as continual and in your face as it is in Paper Girl. The character in Out who says fat phobic things, they are also super hypercritical of themselves and constantly comparing themselves to other people and constantly living just way above their means, which makes their inner dialogue just a little bit unbearable. I think that this story needed this type of character to make the ending of this book make sense. And I feel that I hate that you need like a character to hate to add to a plot. I felt like this book was done very well. So it follows the perspective of 3 women and this unknown person, and you don't know who this unknown person is until you are, I want to say, maybe over halfway done with the book, and that right there is where the suspense is top tier to me. So you're following the story of one woman. She appears to be in poverty, and she also is having a son who don't talk to her and pretty much is in a loveless marriage. You have another woman who is in a relationship with her husband, and she has a kid that she's taking care of, a young kid, and she's also taking care of her husband's mother, and they are having money issues. Then you have a third one, the woman that I talked about who is fat phobic. She is in a relationship with someone, I think she's a bit older in age, and she is living above her means, and she doesn't know how to manage money very well. All 3 of these women worked in a meat factory. It's not just a meat factory, it's also like where they make package like quick meals that you can eat throughout Japan, and they are on like the assembly line doing this, right, making sure that this and this is happening. So already you're creeped out about the setting. Already you're like, meat factory, what the hell is this about? So then something happens that all 3 of these women have to band together and make a crucial decision on what to do next. I don't want to spoil it, but something happens. That's what I will say. However, while you're getting each of these women point of view on their lives and the situation that they got to make a decision on, another character pops up and you're in his voice, and it is the most unsettling thing, the most unsettling thing in the world, to be in his voice and hearing how he acts, what he thinks, and what he's planning to do. All of that had me creeped out from the first page to the last page. And Out is not a short book either. I think it's close to 400 pages. So it's not a short one, and it can be very long. If you ever get the hardback copy, the wording is very little. There is a audiobook if you YouTube it, and you'll find it. So I do want to let you know that. I want to pause in me talking about this list and say, in the beginning of my thriller and mystery journey, I consumed everything because I wanted to know what my taste was, what I preferred, and what I liked. There are a lot of things on this list that I don't think that I would read again. Out is one of those books. For me, I have a hard time now understanding my taste and understanding like just what I don't like. I have a hard time reading thrillers that is solely based on like a woman being abused. Like I don't understand that. I feel like that trope needs to be retired. That storyline needs to just head on out, because it's just consistent and I see it a lot, and it doesn't really matter. Like I used to think, because I recently read The Southern Guide to whatever book club it is by Grady Hendrix, and I used to think, and this was literally like a week ago, I used to think like, oh, you know, it's men writing these things and it's just like, why would you write this and blah blah blah. But it is like people of all, you know, genders and sexes write thrillers that have a lot of violence against women, and it's just really making me uncomfortable, and I don't think that those are books that I really want to gravitate towards. Not saying that if any of y'all read those books you're a bad person or anything like that. I'm just telling you, based on a lot of thrillers and mysteries, I have been reading a ton of thriller, mysteries, and horror since 2017. I've consumed a lot of literature from all over the world, and I just see that to be a common trend, like a common trend that happens, and I just don't want to read books like that anymore. And if I do read them, you know, there's fewer in between. There's just not a lot. Like I just read 5 Strangers. That did have violence against women. However, it wasn't done in a way that I was just like, oh my God, this is unbearable. Like it was a fast paced, very quick to get through thriller, and I appreciated it. And I just wanted to say that. Also in Out, I will say that there is body dismemberment. So if you don't want to read that in your horror, I wouldn't choose that book. It was worth mentioning because I do remember while I was reading it being really creeped out, finding everything to be super suspenseful, down to the way that smells were described in this book was done well, in my opinion. The next book is Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. I cannot make this list without mentioning this book. If I was this young girl who gets sent to this place, if memory is serving me correctly, it's kind of like a girl's home, and she's there because she is being accused of killing a child. And while she's there, unfortunate things are happening to her, and then she gets adopted out to this family. Thing after thing after thing after thing keeps happening. Being in her head, you are now realizing that, you know, or questioning to yourself, is she a reliable voice? Is she someone that you can trust? Even though you're like, oh my God, why would they do this to this kid? You're also understanding that there are some discrepancies of the thoughts in her mind, and it just felt super creepy. Even when she would be questioned about things, the pace in which she would respond to the questions, or the actual words that she would use to answer the questions, it felt deceptively innocent, if that makes sense. I don't know any other way to describe that. So the descriptively innocence was just a very suspenseful thread throughout the whole book. You kept judging the adults in the situation, like, what are y'all doing? Why are you not protecting this child? And you also kept asking yourself, like, what is she doing? What is her end game? And you know that there's something that she's not saying, right? You know there is something that she is not expressing to the reader, and that she is not expressing to the adults around her. And then you get to literally the last couple sentences and your mind is completely blown away. This is a book that I would recommend until I'm blue in the face. You understand? The next book I'm going to recommend is My Sweet Girl, and let me tell you this, My Sweet Girl took me on a journey. So My Sweet Girl is about this young girl, and she is in this orphanage in India, and she has a lot of friends who she loves, and she just loves hanging out with them, and they are the best of her friends. However, there is a thread of jealousy. You will see how this jealousy manifests in the most insidious way all the way to the last chapter. And this little girl one day is just, you know, looking really neat, looking really presentable in this orphanage, waiting for this couple to come. And this couple, they're these very well-off white folks from America who is coming to adopt a child. And while they're there, they adopt her. She moves to America. She lives her life. Everything happens. However, something happened and she is feeling like she is being stalked. She is feeling like someone is either attacking her or she is literally losing her mind. So this girl is also wrapped in a situation that she just will not name, and it did not get named until I think over half of the book, so that would be a spoiler. She's wrapped in something that she will not name. And because she is wrapped in something that she will not name, it is turning her to abuse alcohol. And because she is abusing alcohol, she is losing time in her memory. Like, things are fragmented and she is unsure if she should trust herself. So you are reading this book and you're like, what's going on? What's happening? And then you get to, I think, the epilogue or the last chapter of the book, and you're like, holy shit. Like, you just can't believe that what happened just happened. Because this whole time you're asking yourself, you know, why doesn't she have someone she can turn to? Why is she being a menace to all these people who's trying to support her? Why is she hyper focused on things that she shouldn't have hyper focused on? But it's the psychological impact of her actions and what has happened to her that has really turned her world upside down. So you are just as confused about the trajectory of her life as she is. There are moments where she loses her memory and the author goes back in time and talks about just little like parts of her life in such a suspenseful way, down to like describing the air in India and the paint on the walls and how she felt in her body when she was scared when she was a child. Really creeped you out. The whole thing just creeped you out. And I understand if this book is not a book for you because of moving back and forth in time. I know a lot of people don't like that. They want to be told January 15th, the year was 17 BC, whatever it is. But for me, I love books that jump in and out of time, if that's not something you already know. So that added to the element of suspense for me, because I found myself getting confused. I love being confused, like in the first couple of paragraphs when I'm reading a book that goes in and out of time. And that's what this story gave to me. I'm looking at my list and I thought that I wrote down 13 suspenseful thrillers. That was a lot. That was a lot. It is 12. So let's continue. The next book is worth mentioning. It's The Last Mrs. Parrish by Liv Constantine. When I tell you this book took me through it, I'm interested to reread this book and see if I would have similar feelings. So I read this book a couple years ago, so I'll try to get my recall together, even though it is not that great. We all know that. This book follows this girl, and she moves to this town because she feels like she deserves to be in a happy and loving relationship, and she deserves to be in a family and supported by a man where she is gonna get shmoney, the big bucks, you understand? And she starts to plot to take over this other woman's life. This woman has secrets. She has secrets that has yet to be told. The secrets that she has is super insidious. And I know I keep saying insidious, but that is one of the threads that's in all of the books that I've named today. While she is trying to infiltrate into this family, this book, in the way that it's set up, is letting this woman know that what's green on the other side ain't always green. You know what they say, the grass is always greener on the other side. So this woman is out here thinking that this woman who she's trying to infiltrate her life, thinking that everything over there is just peachy gold and great and wonderful, and it smells like roses, and well, roses don't really, smells like lilacs, and it's not giving lilac, okay? It's giving cat fecal matter, you know what I mean? So the whole time she's really trying, she's trying her lot to see what's up on this other side, and she's not realizing that there are some things on the other side that she don't know about. So the woman who she's trying to take over her life is trying in so little words to inform her her on her actual life. And this girl is so wrapped up in her greed that she refuses to acknowledge it or refuses to understand what this woman is trying to tell her. So then it just becomes a huge mystery on who the woman she's trying to steal her life is and who she is. And let me tell you, the twist and the turn. When you think you know either of them, and you know either of them like true intentions, you don't. You don't. You have no idea. You have no idea what's going on. So specifically with this book, what I found was very suspenseful was the vibes. And I know the vibes is something very popular that's going around booktube community. However, I had to mention this here. The vibes was very like, I don't know what's gonna happen. You know how when you watch a movie and you see a person going to check something out and they don't know what's behind the door, but you see them keep going towards the door and you're like, don't go towards the door, don't go towards the door, and then you start to feel like really creeped out. That is what this book is. This book is giving you that exact feeling. The next book is The Night Swim. Truly, truly, truly love The Night Swim. Actually, now that I think about it, I am going to add a 13th book to this video. Night Swim, I truly enjoyed the format. The format is in very podcast form. It starts off being in a courtroom, and in this courtroom, this guy who is wealthy and very privileged is being accused of something. And the court, and you know how regular courts go, is trying to prove he did this thing or not. There is a woman who has a podcast who is reporting about this crime. In reporting about this crime, she is getting letters from one of her viewers telling her about a crime that happened. So the woman is trying to be in multiple places at one time. She's trying to cover the story of the crime that opened the book, and also trying to figure out what is happening with all of these letters that she is getting about this crime that was committed. It is going from two perspectives. It's going from the perspective of the woman and the perspective of the person who wrote the letters. And their perspective particularly was very suspenseful. The way that they were talking about themselves, talking about their family, talking about the person that was murdered, that they, you know, sent those letters, wrote those letters and sent it to the podcaster woman. Just being in her mind is just very creepy and it's unsettling. And as the reader, you are unsure of this character's mental health. You're just like, you know, is this person just having a hard time? Is stress an indicator? Do you think that they may need mental health services? And then at one point you're asking yourself, are you trying to say that they're having mental health issues because, you know, you're feeling uncomfortable, or is this just some type of grief manifesting itself? Or maybe that's just the therapist in me. I'm not really sure, but those are all things I was thinking of while reading this book. And I was just like, wow, I don't know who to trust. I don't know if this person is like, hey, I'm telling you about this murder, or if this person's like, look, let me play this huge trick on you, let me troll you into thinking there's actually another story while you're covering a story, but there's really not. So you are just not knowing what's going on. And even the people who is in the podcaster life, who she's been working with for years, you are starting to distrust. So the whole time, this feeling of just being very unsure and very distrustful of everyone, you are just like, and the only person that you know for sure is reliable is the podcaster, and you're just like, I don't even know how to even start with thinking who did what and how they did it. The next book I'm going to mention right after that is The Woman in the Library, and it is set up similar. And I love the way The Night Swim was set up, and I love the way The Woman in the Library was set up. The format is something that really pulls to my heartstrings. It opens up with this story of what you would assume is two people who are pen pals. They are writing each other just chapters of their manuscript. They're both writers, and they're both getting opinions on their manuscripts from each other. One of them is a woman, one of them is a man, and the woman seems to be getting, you know, more traction in her story. And she is asking this guy, Leo, to help go ahead and figure out things and help her understand her story. And I forget the woman name, and I only remember Leo because there's 2 Leos in the story. So you are trying to figure things out, and as you are going through the story, you're also actually getting her novel. So you will get it in his perspective, then in perspective of the protagonist in her novel. I know that's like really trippy, but I loved it. I was here for it. Say it with me, here for it. I was loving it, okay? And while you're reading it from the protagonist in her story, after each chapter, Leo gives input about how the chapter could have been made better, or if there was like social justice issues to consider, or if there was just something that he felt wouldn't fit right with an American audience, because the woman who wrote this story is Australian and this man is for Boston. He's trying to make sure that everything that she wrote is accurate to Boston, because that is the scene in which she is writing. I know that that sounds confusing, but the way the author did it was beautiful. You found yourself not confused at all. There are stories and there are authors who I feel do multiple POV not so great in my opinion. I just get confused and I don't know what's going on. One of those authors for me is Lucy Foley. I find it really hard to follow her books that have multiple point of views because I'm very confused. Like in this book, The Woman in the Library, there have to be over 6 characters in this book. It's not their point of views, even though you can tell them apart very easily. In Lucy Foley, I felt like I struggled, but that's just a whole nother topic. The last book I'm going to talk about is The Between by Tananarive Due. We're going back to Tananarive Due. I already told you what kind of writer Tananarive Due is. And the only reason why I told y'all what kind of writer Tananarive Due is because those are criticisms that I hear people say in the book community about her writing. However, she will always be a GOAT to moi. The Between is following the story of this man. It is mainly in his perspective, if not all in his perspective. He is married to this woman. He's doing really well at his job. I think he's the manager at his job. And he is just having moments of time that he cannot account for. So the whole time he is going through this book trying to figure out if he is actually sane, essentially. And he is questioning his mental faculties. People around him is questioning his mental faculties. And then he is getting visits from certain people. And he's also feeling like he is just can't get back to what he was before something happened. And there was something that happened that started. So as the reader, you are questioning his mental capacities and what's going on with him in the same way that he is and the other people that he cares about. There is an element in this book that is unbeknownst to him, and if I tell you, that would be a huge spoiler, like literally the spoiler of the whole book. He is not made aware of this, I think, until closer towards the end of the book. Even when you get towards the end of the book, you're unsure if he even accepted what that change is. But like I said, with The Good House, the descriptions and how this author makes even the setting a character makes the book more eerie, makes the book more suspenseful. The way that she intertwines those elements makes it that much suspenseful. And to be honest, now that it has been given a name, that the setting is also a character, it is making the book just more accessible for me. Oop, not my hair trying to fly away. Y'all didn't tell me. It just makes the books more enjoyable for me. And I also will say I am a person who prefer character driven, 65% to 75% character driven and then plot. That's just really my sweet spot. I think it's really why I didn't enjoy The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, but that's a whole nother story that we can never talk about, right? So let me know if any of these books are books that you're thinking about picking up, and if you are enjoying this series, I can do like another type of blank thrillers or blank horror or blank mystery, whatever, and give those recommendations to you. So have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching this video. I know that's going to be a little lengthy. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. And I also want to let y'all know that over on my Patreon, I provide a bunch of perks. And as you all know, Black Queen-a-thon is coming up. There's a tier on my Patreon where if you subscribe to it, you get early access and to whatever is going on with Black Queen-a-thon this year. Each month I do a 24-hour or 48-hour read along with my Patreon. With that being said, there are other ways to support my channel and other folks in the description box below. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you later. Bye.